Hey guys, Spud here, as always, and today we've got another recording of a one-on-one training session with one of my patrons. Now, my student here has been flying the A-18C in DCS for quite a while now and wanted to try his hand at using the Lightning Targeting Pod in his favorite aircraft and get some instruction on the basic employment of smart weapons in the Hornet. Now, I always like to start off these lessons by going over the basic usage of the targeting pod, what all the controls do, how to use those controls, as well as make sure that the students don't have any conflicting keybinds, because those conflicting keybinds can really make using the targeting pod here in DCS very, very difficult. And as you'll see in this training session, the student here had an axis set for his radar elevation up and down, which is also coincidentally bound to zooming the targeting pod in and out in a fine kind of zoom setting. As well as he had two buttons that were mapped to radar elevation and targeting pod zoom in and out as well. And so the axis was overriding the buttons he was trying to use, which made using the targeting pod very, very difficult. So for new DCS World players out there, you're trying to learn how to use the targeting pod, absolutely ensure that you don't have any conflicting keybinds when it comes to the actual usage of the targeting pod. That's my biggest thing there. And then another thing that I always like to really stress to my students when trying to use the targeting pod is I really don't care whether they can hit the broadside of a barn with a JDAM or a laser guided bomb. It's all about kind of getting the basic mechanics down to ensure that once they leave me, they'll have the tools to be able to perfect it by themselves. One of those really, really big tools that really helps with smart weapons employment and using a targeting pod is making sure that my students aren't necessarily flying over the top of their target. We want to have a really good offset away from the target area, so that way the targeting pod's gimbals aren't overwhelmed as you're trying to move it across the ground. As I'm sure many of you guys out there have noticed, the closer you are to your target, the harder time it is to move the targeting pod around fast enough in order to acquire a target. And so when you have all these different things happening all at once and things are moving faster and faster and faster and faster, as you get closer and closer to the target, it can just make things go really bad in a hurry and make it extremely frustrating to try and learn how to use a targeting pod. So what I try to set up my students to do is fly a orbit, usually a right-hand or a left-hand orbit, around the target, stood off at about 20 nautical miles away from the target area itself, to give them plenty of, room to work their targeting pod while they're flying, kind of in a perpendicular track to their target. So that way they've got plenty of time in the world to find a target, designate that target, then turn into the target and attack it. And that's a really good way to start off, so that way you're already practicing a pretty good tactic for attacking a target with smart weapons. You don't want to just be nose on to your target the entire time, because you're eventually going to get too close to be able to have the targeting pod's gimbals move fast enough to track a target, number one, and then you're going to run out of time, get further and further and further behind your aircraft, get into a dangerous attitude with your aircraft, and then potentially even get hit by flak or a SAM because you're so distracted trying to get that targeting pod onto a target. I always like to have people start off with using JDAMs first, especially in target of opportunity mode in conjunction with the targeting pod, because that's the simplest and easiest weapon to use in conjunction with the targeting pod. All they have to do is designate the target, fly into the zone, press the piccolo button, and Bob's your uncle, the target should explode if they've gotten the crosshairs of the targeting pod onto the very base of that target. Now, once they've kind of mastered that skill, they've kind of got the idea, okay, I move the crosshairs over the target, I designate the target, then we fly towards it and we drop the weapon. Cool, once that's good to go, we then will move to laser guided bomb employment, because that requires a few more steps. We have to fly as close to that fall line as possible, press and hold the pickle button to authorize the jet to drop the weapon off in a CCRP or auto mode release here in the FA-18, and that weapon will then fall away, and then 15 seconds before impact, or whatever you decide is best for the target that you're employing your weapon against, the laser will start firing, and you have to, of course, keep the targeting pod on the target the entire time until impact. It's kind of like the way that I will have pilots in DCS first employ AMRAAMs before they employ Sparrows, because it's kind of the same thing, the difference between fire and forget and something you have to support all the way until impact. And supporting something all the way until impact requires that much more skill and that much more experience to make it work correctly. So the great thing about the FA-18C, I think, which is better than the way the F-16 does it, and I'm very curious to see how McDonnell Douglas handled it in the F-15E coming up from RASBAM, is the fact that you can use one laser-guided bomb in DCS FA-18, you can use them all, as well as all of the different GPS INS guided weapons in the FA-18. If you can drop a GBU-38, you can drop all the JDAMs, as well as your JSOWs, and even do a TOO engagement of a target with one of the land attack Harpoon cruise missile variants. So it's a very, very involved lesson. It's one of my favorite lessons to do with folks because it is so involved and so technical, which is kind of like the bread and butter of these lessons that I do with folks. It's also one of the most difficult lessons to give from the perspective of the instructor, because I always liken using the targeting pod to flying 2 jets at the same time, and then for me as the instructor, I'm now multiplying that by 2. I'm flying 4 jets at the same time. I'm flying my jet with my targeting pod, and I'm flying the student's jet with their targeting pod, because I have to keep in my brain kind of that spatial awareness of where my student's flying, make sure they're keeping in that beautiful orbit around the targets, that way they don't mask their targeting pod, as well as keep in mind where their targeting pod is pointed, even as I'm looking inside of my own cockpit and trying to fly my own jet and work my own targeting pod to be able to kind of essentially follow them through their steps and then help them out in their employment of weapons. So it's always a really, really good time, guys. Keep in mind that I do one-on-one training sessions with all of my patrons out there who donate $15 or more to support my channel, and I tried to get to all of you guys as expeditiously as possible. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Fly safe and have fun out there, and enjoy this beautiful game. BCD and flop it over to FLIR.
Alright. CCD. Okay, so now it's in FLIR.
Beautiful. So now we want to go sensor control switch right to assign our TDC to that right-hand DDI.
Yep, now it's zooming.
Cool. We're kind of blocked by some clouds, at least I am, but right below the camera there should be some fires that should be readily able to be seen through the targeting pod. Once we get around these clouds,
all right, so I'm assuming the diamond in my HUD up there, that's at the top on the rows is the heading button.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep,
and I'm looking
exactly.
down at the I'm looking at my my SA page, and I see the circle with the looks like the pyramid in it.
Yep, that's a ranging cue for when you can drop a JDAM. Okay. So in your targeting pod field of view, move it down slightly. So use your TDC to move it down slightly. Now
okay.
Zoom it out. You're too zoomed in. We got to find those fires because that's going to guide you onto the targets.
Okay, so how do I zoom this out?
Use your radar elevation controls. All right, and start to slow down, and we're going to enter an orbit around the target because we're going to get too close to it too quickly here.
Okay, so I see a zoom up and down. Is that what I want?
Yep.
So I want to zoom.
All right, now keep moving the pod down a little bit. I think you're close to those fires. Keep moving, keep moving. Keep moving it down. and keep moving it right. Oh, there you go. So that's a runway there. So
Yeah.
just keep moving it down, move it up, back to the runways.
Okay.
And then hit, I think you have the field of view zoomed in, so at the top left, it should say wide rather than narrow. So want to click that.
Okay.
And so start to move the pod to the right now. Follow those runways to the right.
All right, it's on wide now.
All right, follow those runways to the right. There we go.
Yeah.
So there should be some aircraft around those fires on the ramp there. Put those aircraft, or which aircraft you want to attack, underneath the crosshair, and then you can zoom in to identify those aircraft a little bit better. So at this point, I want you to turn your aircraft 90 degrees to the left-hand side, so that way we don't get on top of the target.
Okay.
We want to establish an orbit around our target, so that way we're not on top of it.
So that target, where is that target? Is that to our left?
It's to our right. So,
Am I going to? I'm turning left. Should I be turning right?
nope, because we're establishing an orbit around the target, not on the target. So,
Okay.
that turn is going to allow you. So go ahead and start the rollout.
Now
All
my
right.
screen went black.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. So, and then start a turn to your right now. That's going to put you in an orbit around the target.
Okay.
So the target is that airfield that's on fire. About your 7 o'clock. I'm sorry, your 5 o'clock, I should say.
Oh, I see it. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
And you're on the opposite side of it over there.
Nope. I'm right over here. I'm just in between you and the airfield.
Okay, yeah. I've got you on my.
Yep. So lessen the bank a bit. So only go for about, a 20-degree bank or so. Just a nice, easy, gentle bank. Make sure that your autopilot's on barometric altitude hold, so you don't have to worry about flying the jet. Lessen that bank. Lessen that bank.
Okay.
All right. So your autopilot is not wanting to come on. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Not sure what the deal with that is. But anyway, just go ahead and hold this heading here, and then start to search the airfield down there for an aircraft.
Okay. So my altitude select.
Yeah, it's not working. So
Yeah.
just go ahead, just hold your current heading with your aircraft.
Okay. So I'm at a heading
Because-
of 190.
Yep, so see how you're spiraling closer and closer and closer to the target? We want to
Yeah.
avoid that. Okay, so now start searching the airfield with your targeting pod for an aircraft to bomb.
Okay. All right. I see like some transports.
Cool. So now zoom in on one of those, and what you want to do is you want to put your crosshair right at the base of those targets, so probably right on the closest landing gear to your aircraft.
All right. So now when I hit the zoom OSB, it doesn't do anything.
So it's going to be the up OSB. So click and hold, and then hit the FOV zoom, which is going to be that top left. Top left is where it says wide. Click on that guy, and that'll zoom it in a bit more.
Oh, that's the zoom.
So that's one type of zoom, and then the up and down arrows are another type of zoom. And
Yes.
the zoom level is shown, it says Z, 0 through 9. 9 is the most zoomed in, and 0 is no zoom.
Okay. So this is when I hit this, it's not
Yeah.
changing the zoom.
Huh. Are you clicking it, or are you pressing and holding it?
I'm clicking it.
Try pressing and holding it.
Okay. Now my screen went blank.
That's fine. What you'll need to do is you're spiraling too close to the airfield. That's why it went blank. So
Okay.
Let me look at you on the map and see how I can help here. So turn 90 degrees to your right-hand side. So your screen turned black because the pod can't see inside of itself. So you want to start to develop an innate sense of where the pod can see and where it can't see.
Okay.
So what we're trying to establish here is a right-hand orbit around the airport where we're flying our jet in a manner that we're never masking the targeting pod.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so I see an airfield over there, but I don't see any fires on it.
That's fine. There's 2 airfields. That's probably the other airfield.
Okay.
So go ahead and go another 30 degrees to your right-hand side, so that way your pod's not masked anymore. What's your current airspeed?
380.
Yeah, so no need to go so fast, right?
Okay.
Just slow it down and just go nice and slow with it all. All right. So hold that heading there, right? So it's kind of like we're flying like a kind of a polygonal shape rather than a constant bank around the airport. If we fly at a constant bank, we're going to spiral close to it. So if you kind of roll out and hold that heading, then we can... So we got a cloud in the way now, so we just got to watch for that.
Okay. So now I got my barometric hold set, and I've got my auto throttle set.
All right.
I see the plane, but I see the clouds coming in on it.
Yep. So once you can see the aircraft clearly, click TDC depress to set that target point and give it to your bomb, and then we'll be able to start your attack run to actually drop one of those weapons. So at this point, you just have to be exceedingly gentle with your stick and rudders, because if you're not, then you're going to kick the autopilot off.
Got it. So now I have a diamond with a hash on each side.
Yep, so that means that you now have a target set, so you can now fly towards the target point and then drop the bomb when the bomb says it's in range.
Okay. So I've got a timer counting down. I've got a blinking cursor on my screen, a blinking diamond.
Yep, so see that arrow with a number in the middle of your HUD?
Yes, it's counting down.
That's how many degrees to the right-hand side the target is. So go ahead and just maneuver harshly to get your nose onto the target. Just get that autopilot off if you need to.
Okay, so I'm making a harder turn now.
Yep.
So I'm down in the teens now.
All right.
All right, now it's straight below me.
Yep, so that's where you want to roll out and just fly until you see in zone on your HUD. And once you see in zone, wait a little bit longer and then pickle the weapon off. And the weapon will guide itself into the target. Because it's a JDAM, you don't have to support it, so you can fire and forget it.
Okay. Timer's down to 0. In zone. Now I'm getting a time to target.
And go ahead and drop it.
Pickle.
Nice. So we can now watch your weapon fall. So at this point, we need to reestablish that orbit so that way you can find your next target. So
come off to the left.
Yep. Go ahead and 90 degrees left, and then we'll make a 90-degree right-hand turn a little bit to reestablish the orbit.
Okay. All right, rolling out due north.
All right, I'm right underneath you here.
Trying to maintain 18,000.
Fantastic. And go ahead and start a turn to your right.
Okay.
Weapon is still falling. Maybe dropped it from a little too far out, but it's trying its best to get there. So even though the bomb says it's in range, if you're flying really slow, then the bomb doesn't have much energy to use for its glide. Oh, yeah. And impact. You hit it.
Okay. Good.
Nice shot.
I hope you're recording this, because we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. So roll out on this heading, and your pod should be unmasked. And I want you to attack the second transport that's right next to there.
Okay, so I'm going to make very gradual moves.
Yep.
Try to find it.
So your pod should have been right where it was originally looking, right? So
yeah, right there is the original.
Yep. So it should be just to the left of that guy. Just move it left just a little bit more. A little bit more.
There he is.
Yep.
Oh,
and then, so it's masked, right? So no problem. Just keep turning to the right. Just keep that orbit going.
Okay, got it designated.
Beautiful. And so if it's designated, then you're good to rock and roll for that second drop.
Okay.
So you can just fly right onto the target and kill that second airplane.
Okay, so I don't have the... I have the countdown, but I don't have the pointer showing me how many degrees.
Go ahead and press TDC to press again, just to make sure you have it fully designated.
Ah, there it is.
Yep.
So now I'll be approaching it really from the opposite direction now.
Yep, exactly. So if you're making multiple passes on a target, especially a defended target, you want to always attack a target from different directions and altitudes, so that way enemy AAA gunners down there will have a harder time tracking you.
Got it. So in this case, I'm really coming at it at the same altitude, just on the reciprocal, which is not a good idea.
Yeah, reciprocal is probably not a good idea, but just because we're practicing today, that's fine. I just wanted to impart that piece of wisdom is all.
All right, now I'm in zone.
Yep, and we're going kind of slow here. I'm right off of your left wing, so I would wait a little bit. Okay. Because that last drop, the bomb was struggling. It was on the struggle bus for sure.
Okay.
And go ahead and pickle.
Pickle.
Nice, there it goes. All right, so let's reestablish that.
To the left?
Yep. We'll reestablish the orbit.
All right, steadying up at 190.
All right. And so now, of course, you're pretty asymmetrical, so just make sure you're always trimming your jet out, just to make sure it's as easy as possible to fly.
Yeah. Okay, steadied up.
All right. So let's go ahead and see your bomb falling here, and we'll get a BDA on that other aircraft. And just missed the actual aircraft itself, but you ripped the tail off with the shrapnel. So that's definitely a kill on that aircraft.
It's not flying.
Yeah, never again, that's for sure. Aircraft are about the softest targets around, that's for sure. Yeah. All right. So now we'll go ahead and engage with our laser-guided bomb. Okay. Or bombs, I should say. So go ahead and select your 82 LGs. So the reason why it says 82 LG instead of like GBU-12 on the stores page is because the GBU-12 is just a Mark 82 with a laser guidance kit on it. So that's why, for the confusing nomenclature there. All right. So we got that guy all set up and ready to go. We can go ahead and make that right-hand turn to unmask the targeting pod, and that way we can find our next target. So there should be some more targets down there. There's quite a few airplanes. So watch how much altitude you're losing on these turns, right? So try and keep that velocity vector right on the horizon for me. Just try to match, you need to kind of match your bank angle with how much you're pulling back on the stick to maintain altitude in those turns. Okay. Level turns are key, especially when we're trying to work with a targeting pod. Because the targeting pod can do okay with bank angle changes, but it hates pitch changes.
Got it.
Alright, so once your pod is unmasked, if you start to move the pod down and you go for the second big fire, there's some more airplanes by the second big fire. So zoom the pod out so that way you have a bigger field of view to work with. Whenever I'm trying to move the pod, I'm always zooming it out to have a better view of things. And go ahead and hold this heading for now.
Alright, so now it's on wide.
Beautiful, that's going to help. And keep rolling out so that way it's not masked anymore. There we go. Okay. And so keep moving that pod down a bit.
Alright, more transports there.
Beautiful. Whatever you want to attack, that's totally fine.
Well, I like transports because they're big and fat right now.
Alright, that works too. Okay.
Alright, so I've designated that.
Yep. So your pod automatically is set to 1688 for your default laser code. Your bomb's already on 1688, so you're good to rock and roll there. So new symbology on the HUD now, right? So you're going to have a fall line, which is a big vertical line on your HUD. We need to fly on that fall line, and then when we get the a horizontal line that starts to fall down the fall line, we need to press and hold the pickle button in order to authorize the jet to release the bomb when it feels is the proper time to release it.
Okay, so I don't have either one of those at this point.
Yep, that's because we're flying away from the target. We also need to make sure we arm our laser by going down by our FLIR radar and INS controls. There's a switch labeled LTD/R. We need to hit that in order to turn on our laser designator.
Okay, it's on.
Sweet.
And now I've got an L arm. And I'm starting a right-hand turn.
Nice. And make sure you designate those airplanes as your target by going TDC to press again.
Okay, I've got a diamond with the hashes on it.
Beautiful.
Cube.
That
right, now I've got a line.
Yep, so we just want to follow that line. And we want to fly on that line. And as soon as you get within 10 seconds to release, you want to start pressing and holding your pickle button. Now, once the weapon falls away, because it needs a laser designation, we can't just fly away from it right away. We have to hold our heading and make sure that we don't mask the pod, because if we mask the pod, then the bomb's going to lose the laser.
Got it. So we have to guide this in.
Yep, it is not fire and forget.
Okay.
Alright, so we're a perfect distance from the target to get on that fall line, nice and easy. Got 20 degrees to go. And just start a very gentle rollout. There you go. And just get that velocity vector right on your fall line there. And so now it says auto X number of seconds to release.
Yep, 37 seconds.
Beautiful. I'm right off your wing, so I'm seeing exactly the same thing you're seeing. Once we get to about 10 seconds to release, I want you to press and hold your weapon release button, so that way you are going to authorize the release of the weapon.
Okay.
Alright, start that press and hold for me.
Alright, holding.
Hold it, hold it, hold it. Keep holding it, keep holding it, keep holding it, keep holding it, keep holding it. And good separation. Now maintain this heading. Keep on the fall line, maintain the heading, and your pod will stay unmasked. Trim out the jet if you need to. And your laser will automatically fire itself when the weapon is 15 seconds from impact. And then the weapon should impact.
Now I've got an LTDR.
Beautiful, and it should be flashing.
Yep.
Nice, that means your laser is firing. And boom, you got him.
Yeah.
Nice, right?
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Yeah. So now that we've got that done, we got one more bomb left. What's your fuel state?
I am at 7.9.
All right, I'm at 8.1. So we can rearm your laser. So after every automatic firing of the laser will safe itself on a spring-loaded switch. So just rearm that guy. And then we just want to reestablish that hold around the target area to find the next target. The good thing is, with a laser-guided bomb, we're already flying away from the target. So we just need to make that 90-degree right-hand turn.
Okay. Okay, got a good pod, it looks like.
Nice. So roll out on that heading, and we'll just hold this heading until we get the pod masked again, then we'll make another 90-degree right-hand turn.
Okay.
So pick out a new target.
Let's see, I've got it on wide, that's where I want it.
Yep. There's looks like there's two other large transports to the, it's like to the north of that one. From our perspective, it's to the right.
Right.
Oh, so looks like you lost the airfield entirely.
Yeah.
So you just got to be really, really gentle when you're moving that pod, because otherwise you're going to lose where you already were. So let's zoom out all the way. So on where it's the up and down arrows on the left-hand side of the screen, does it say where it says Z? What does it say? What's the number next to Z?
Z9.
So you're zoomed in all the way on the pod. So let's zoom all the way out. Press and hold the down arrow to zoom the pod all the way out to Z0.
Okay, so it's not doing anything.
That's weird.
Neither button does anything that.
Do you have radar elevation set to an axis?
I believe I do. Let me see what
So that will do it. So radar elevation is linked to the zoom on the targeting pod.
Let me see where I mapped that. Sensor right, sensor left, trim. Okay. Castle, sensor left, right. I don't know that I do have that map.
So something is making your pod stay zoomed in. So go ahead and hit escape and let's go to adjust controls.
Okay.
And you're looking for radar elevation control dash down and up. So you can also search for it in the search function if you type radar.
Where is
or
this?
if up top where it says all but access commands, you can go to search, or you can go to the HOTAS category, and it should be in the HOTAS category. Cool. So with radar, it should be in radar elevation up and down.
Yep.
Is it mapped to anything?
Yeah. So the stick right, joystick button 4 and 5. So yeah, that's my chaff and flare. I guess I didn't have that logged. So yeah, I've got it mapped right there.
Okay. So so how did you get them double bound to chaff and flares as well as radar elevation controls?
Because so on the X56, I've got, if you're familiar with it, it's got like a trim, it's got a castle, and it's got a silver button. And so the silver, I made the silver left. So there's really 5 different binding alternatives, I guess. Left, right, up, down, and then no touch. So if I don't touch that, I hit button 1 or 2, that's chaff and flares. If I hit the silver button to the right, then that same buttons become radar elevation up and down.
Okay. Well, let's try that because something is messing with your ability to do it on the OSB buttons, which is odd. I've never seen that happen before. So let's go ahead and unpause.
All right,
and so try those radar elevation controls. All right, so that's not working.
No, I'm not getting anything on it.
So once the pod is masked, let's go ahead and turn 90 degrees right again. And so that way we don't get the pod masked. And then what we can do here is we can reset the pod back to our target by going, let's see here. There's no cursor 0 on the Tomcat, or I mean not the Tomcat, the Hornet. Let's see here. What can we do?
Well, I'm just baffled why those switches aren't, or why the buttons aren't working on the screen itself.
Yeah, let's try unbinding your radar elevation controls and see if unbinding that allows the buttons on the OSB to work. And I mean, I've seen you click the other OSB buttons, so it's not like you're not clicking it correctly or something.
I'll unbind that.
Yep. It just seems like there's some sort of conflict here that's being weird. And then let me make sure there's no axis commands, because there might be an axis command that you have that's messing with it as well. Because the X56 has all these axes on the throttle that you can assign to things like radar elevation, which is actually very helpful.
So I got those mini sticks, and the mini stick on the throttle I use for the TDC. And then the mini stick on the throttle or the stick is just not mapped to anything.
So look for radar elevation control in the axes and see if there's anything bound to it.
Radar elevation control joystick Z.
Yep. So that's what the issue is. So
what is Z though?
So move all the different axes on your throttle. Is that on the throttle or the stick?
All right, so I'm moving on the throttle now.
Okay. Just move all the different ones.
Oh, it's right here.
Yep.
That's the circular, it's the radial at the top.
Yep. So go ahead and hit OK. And now you know, so axes will override everything in DCS. And that's because they're essentially, so like buttons like give a momentary press, like a keyboard or a mouse click, right? But axes are giving a command all the time to DCS, and so that's why it overwrites everything else. So if you use that axis now, you'll be able to zoom the pod in and out.
Oh yeah, it's doing it now.
Yep. So zoom the pod all the way out. That's in.
So I'm zooming it all the way out to 0.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and undesignate. So select a different waypoint.
Okay, all right, so now it's not designated.
That's fine. Now select back to waypoint 5 and redesignate that waypoint as a target, and it should snap the pod to it.
All right, so waypoint 5.
And then hit waypoint designate.
Okay, so...
Yep, so now move the pod down to those fires.
Trying to get steadied up here. right.
Gentle with your controls. That was really, really harsh on the controls there.
Yeah.
So zoom in on those fires there. Those fires are where the airfield is.
Okay. All right, so now the zoom control is not working.
Just try to keep moving it. Try moving it a little more.
Oh, there we go. Now it's working.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm at 9.
Okay, and now hit the wide button and zoom in the FOV so that way you can zoom it in more.
Okay.
And so now start to look for an aircraft down there. So it's going to be that other fire. So that fire by the control tower is what we already bombed. So move it to the right and then move it down a bit. To the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. Keep going right, keep going right. There you go. Keep going right. That second fire, keep going down and to the right.
There.
Yep. So there you go.
All right, so I'm going to target this because I got a greater chance at doing damage in there.
Yep.
All right, designated.
Cool. And then fly in towards the target.
Okay, so I've let my airspeed and my altitude drop tremendously.
Yep.
So I need to get that back. So I'm going to start a gradual climb and a turn, and I'm going to throttles back up, but I'm trying to stay out of burner so I can keep the gas somewhat in line. I'm at 7.1 now.
Yep, I am as well. It's all good. We'll have plenty to get home.
Okay, fall line's active.
All right.
Okay, leveling out on the fall line.
All right.
I'm at 17.5. All right, now I've got auto 99 release set.
Yep, you're so far away that it can't calculate a release point.
Okay.
So once you get to about 20 miles out, that's when it will start to calculate a release point.
Now, I'm looking at the targeting pod, and the airplane is no longer designated.
Yep, so remember TDC depressed to designate the point. So put your crosshairs over the aircraft and TDC depress.
All right. And I'm back on the fall line, and I'm designated.
All right.
And I'm going to level off now at 21.
Okay.
And pulling back to 380. So I ended up at 22 and 380. You know, I guess the hard part for me is because I'm not really in practice, I'm so far behind the plane.
Yep, exactly.
And it's just practice.
Yep. It is practice. So in real life, pilot would be flying for years before they ever drop a laser guided bomb, right?
Yeah.
So in DCS, you can skip ahead years, in your experience level. But so it's all about keeping situational awareness up and making sure that, because using the targeting pod is like flying two airplanes. You're flying your own airplane and you're flying the targeting pod, and you just have to really think about, okay, where's the pod looking, in relation to what I'm seeing on the ground outside of my own airplane. Okay, I see an airfield with fires on it. Okay, I see an airfield with fires on it in my targeting pod. And you want, whenever you're moving the targeting pod around looking for stuff, you want to be zoomed out. So that way you have as big of a field of view as possible, then zoom it in.
Yeah. Which makes perfect sense.
Yep, double check that your laser is armed.
It is armed, and I'm at 23 seconds to release. I'm counting down.
All right.
So at 10, I'm going to hit the pickle.
No, you're going to press and hold, right, until the little horizontal line crosses your velocity vector, and you hear the ka-chunk of your bomb releasing.
All right, pressing and holding. Falling, 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 and pickle.
There it goes. Good separation. Are you going after those IL-76s again?
Uh-huh.
All right.
So I'm going to stay on my path.
Yep.
All right, looks like it's active.
All right. Got my eyes on the 2 remaining IL-76s, so there we go, impact. So just missed off the forward nose, but that airplane's never flying again, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
So the cool thing with a laser-guided bomb, right, is as it's falling, if you're like, oh wow, my crosshairs aren't really all that perfect on the target, you can move the crosshairs onto the target, right?
Oh, okay.
Because it's getting active guidance, you can sweeten up the picture. Once the JDAM is off the jet, it's gone. You know?
Okay, yeah. So I can slew it around then, basically.
Yeah. Now, you don't want to do it very fast, and you don't want to, like, make a big correction. But if, like, say, you notice, oh, my crosshair isn't actually on top of that airplane, if you just gently, like, nudge it over on top of it as the bomb is falling, that's totally fine.
Okay.
All right. So, currently shotgun at this point. So, let's go ahead and fly to waypoint 7. That'll line us up for the runway for a landing at King Hussein.
Okay. Start ahead. All right, just hit bingo?
Yep. I just hit bingo as well, so we're totally on our fuel schedule.
All right, so I'm going to start a gradual right-hand turn.
All right, I'm kind of pretty far in trail with you here, so I'm just gaining on you slowly.
Okay. I guess I could turn this pod off now.
You can turn it off, or you can leave it on.
Okay.
I always like to look at other jets with my pod because I think that's fun.
Yeah, right. It's something to do, huh?
So, now that we're getting low on gas, have you ever looked at your FPAS page before?
I have not.
Okay. So once we get on heading to waypoint 7, we'll look at that real quick. Okay. Even though we're 67 miles out from waypoint 7, it's going to go quick. So we'll do a quick overview of the FPAS page. So at this point, let's go ahead and fence out. So master arm off, back to navigation master mode, and we'll get our external lights back on.
All right, so fence is out.